never smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Welcome, guys. Miss Liz in the house, and I have the incredible Chris Galang in the house, and we're going to be talking about the Kampeon drinks today, and we're going to be talking about his story and all that good stuff, but we're going to be serving his tea, and his tea is turning experience into action. That is the tea we are serving in this house. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all of those platforms, those social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all of those good platforms, and any other ones that are out there that Miss Liz doesn't ever mention. You guys know where they are. Just find them, give those a like, follow, and subscribe, and get these tea times out there because they do make a difference for my guests and for the listeners who resonate with the stories that come to the table. Before we get started, we're going to get a disclaimer, and then we're going to get Chris in here, and we're going to serve his tea. So let's get started with disclaimer. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I, Miss Liz, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where stories are not just heard, they are felt, lived, and shared in ways that connect us across cultures and experiences. Today's guest brings us a story of identity, rediscovery, and turning something deeply personal into something that the world can experience. Please join me in welcoming Chris Galang, founder of the Kampeon Water, a culturally inspired vitamin-enhanced sparkling water brand that celebrates Filipino heritage through flavor and purpose. Chris's journey is one many can relate to, growing up between two worlds, balancing the culture of his roots with the expectations of everyday life. It wasn't until adulthood that he felt the pull to reconnect with his heritage, and that quiet longing became something powerful. After nearly 20 years in banking, working closely with entrepreneurs and learning what it takes to build something meaningful, Chris made the decision to create something of his own, something that honored where he comes from. And that's where Kampeon was born. Kampeon, meaning champion, is more than a brand. It's a tribute to culture, identity, and the power of flavor to bring people together. His tea reflects the journey, turning experience into action, and his story stands on courage, culture, and purpose. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's Tea Time is about identity, heritage, and what happens when you turn your story into something the world can feel. Let me get Chris in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Miss Liz.
It is an honor to have you here, and I've been excited to share a drink on tea time because everybody's like, Miss Liz, where's the tea? Where's the drink? Where's So, Chris, let's get to know you a little bit before we get into the Kampeon Water and drinking that. Who were you as a little guy, and who are you now?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kampeon was sort of born out of those experiences. But my name is Chris Galang. I'm the youngest of 3 children. I grew up in Southern California, made my way up the state of California, and now based in San Francisco. I think that if you were to ask my parents and family who I was when I was a kid, I was probably a little precocious, a little naughty, but always very curious. And I think that in a lot of ways still describes me today. I think I'm inherently curious and want to know how things work, want to learn new things. And that's sort of what brought me from banking to now founding a beverage brand.
Yeah, because that's 2 completely different worlds, right? So it's almost kind of like 2 different cultures as well.
Yeah,
you got the
absolutely.
business world, and then you got the personal worlds, right? That you've gotten into.
Definitely. I know. I get that question a lot around you were in banking and now you are selling waters. And, I had the fortune of working, as you mentioned, in our small business division when I was in banking. And so I really had the opportunity to meet and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners. And in the back of my head, sort of all through those years, I knew I wanted to build something of my own. And I think I was looking for the right opportunity, the right timing, and the right inspiration. And last summer sort of presented all of those things at once. And so I sort of say that if this doesn't work out, the banks will be there, but sort of this moment will not be here. And this moment, I'm not getting any younger. And so I figure, why not? The best time is always now when you are preparing to do something like this. And so to anyone out there that's thinking about starting a small business, the time's never going to be perfect. Make the dive. And I will say that a lot of people do come out to offer help. And so it might feel scary, but it'll be worth it.
Well, we got a question here, and then I'm going to get into some of my questions that I got here. But we have a listener that's tuning in, and Rochelle wants to know. She said, "Love this conversation. What inspired Kampeon Water's first flavor? Because what is the first flavor?"
Yeah, and Miss Liz and I were just chatting on this before we got on, but Kampeon is the name of
a Kampeon. And you even told me how to say it, and here I am saying it.
I know. Kampeon. No. So our flavors are calamansi, lychee, and melon. And I wanted each of the flavors in our sort of inaugural set to have a story that I could draw upon, a memory that I could draw upon from childhood. And so each one sort of represents something that, as I look back on my childhood, I had very distinct memories of. And so part of, and I know we'll get into this later on, but part of the reason I created this brand was because I had this longing to sort of reconnect and learn more about my Filipino heritage. And the most powerful memories that I have, and sort of the strongest connection that I had was flavors, food flavors. And so coming up with those 3, melon, calamansi, and lychee, each one of them has sort of a very distinct memory behind it. And I wanted to pay honor to those memories as I created the brand.
Well, we have another question here for you that comes in from Todd Canfield. How did your Filipino roots shape your business decisions?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around authenticity. I think that there's also a lot of things that you have to unlearn as well. A lot of times there's a lot of things in the Filipino culture that maybe aren't as talked about. And it's things like, this idea of not asking for help and being able to do things on your own, or, staying in the safe lane in terms of your career and having things like becoming a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, things like that, staying in sort of those lanes. And so some of it was that there were things that I had to unlearn in terms of when you're starting a new brand, you ask for help all the time. And so part of it was just getting over that mental block. When you're fundraising, you have to ask for money, which is oftentimes a big no-no also culturally. And so I think that from one end, it was this idea of being authentic to myself and to my Filipino roots, because I'll be the first to say that I am not the expert at Filipino culture, but what I am really good at is, again, asking for help, being vulnerable, and telling people where, I need help filling in the gaps. And that's where the community has just been so great. I learned a lot about Filipino culture as I've started this brand, from different terms, from different cultural celebrations, things like that. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to do this in the first place. But I would say that staying authentic and making sure that I am learning and unlearning the things that I need to.
I like that you're saying that, learning and unlearning, because that's what I want my listeners to learn from all of my guests, right? Is all of them are learning and experiencing, failing and trying again. We all have that journey and that story of getting there.
Absolutely.
So learning and unlearning. I like that. That message is powerful, Chris, because the listeners see all the titles or all the big successes, and then they're like, oh, that was easy for them. No, it was not. You mentioned fundraising. Let's talk about fundraising, because a lot of people don't talk about fundraising when they start a business.
Yeah. So far I've bootstrapped this business. But for anyone that knows anything about launching a consumer goods brand or like a tangible product, it takes a lot of capital. And so I'm about to embark on my first fundraising effort, probably this summer. One of the things that I wanted to do before I asked for money from my friends and family was be able to demonstrate traction. And so I knew that I wanted to hit some company milestones before I went out and asked for money. And so we've hit those milestones. And so we're getting ready to do some fundraising this summer. And then probably we're a little ways away from like institutional investing or like VC money. But trying to build those relationships now is probably the big focus when I think about that stage of where we're at right now. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's not the most fun thing to ask people for money. But in this business, like I said, it's something that you kind of have to do to survive, unless you're already fortunate to have a very big bank account behind you.
Right, everybody just thinks, oh, we just swing that magic wand, right? And then the fairy godmother comes and poof, it's all there. We have a question here for you, Chris, from Matt. What was the biggest challenge leaving finance?
The paycheck. No, but in a lot of ways, it is. It's the comfort of having a direct deposit every 2 weeks, having insurance, and I don't have that anymore, and so it's sort of all on me, and so decisions feel bigger. Decisions have a lot more impact, but yeah, certainly leaving that safety net was probably the most difficult thing. Probably the other most difficult thing was leaving my team. I was at my previous job for 20 years, and so made a lot of friends who I can still consider friends. And so I think those two things are probably the things that come up to mind when I reflect on that decision.
Well, we have a question about a flavor, so I'm going to pull up the image of the drink so people can see what we're talking about. We're talking about these incredible drinks. And the question that I want to pull up is the question about am I saying it right? What? Calamansi flavors sounds unique. Where can we try them?
Yeah, that's oftentimes the first question I get when we're doing sampling or demos. Calamansi is a citrus fruit native to the Philippines. The best way to describe it is a cross between a lime and a mandarin orange. So it's a really unique flavor. It looks sort of like the rind and the skin is green, but when you cut into it, it's like orange. And so yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Very citrusy, very bright. In the Philippines, it's actually used in a variety of applications, from sweet to savory, sort of everything in between. And it's a pretty iconic fruit of the Philippines. And so I knew that when we were going to launch the brand, that was definitely going to be in the lineup.
So, Chris, how did you market the cans? Like, get the images on the cans. Who designed that for you?
Yeah, this is actually advice that I give to anyone that's looking to start a brand, is that there are some things that you should invest on and some things that you should be a little bit more scrappy on. But your brand is sort of your first introduction to the world, right? So I did invest in a really great agency and designer to bring this brand to life. I went through that process of writing out a brief, sort of understanding what I wanted it to stand for, what it should and shouldn't look like, when it was going to be on shelf at the grocery stores, who were going to be its likely neighbors, sort of taking all of that and really working with some really talented designers to bring it to life. But yeah, it's all original. The in the creative brief I gave to our designers, I wanted them to draw inspiration from the Filipino jeepney. If you're unfamiliar with the jeepney, they were repurposed World War II vehicles that were left there after the war, that the country repurposed into public transportation. They're still used today. So if you just type in Filipino jeepney, you'll see that they are very colorful. They're very bright. They're sort of part of everyday life in the Philippines. And probably most analogous to, if you're familiar with the tuk-tuks in Thailand, for example, it's sort of a open air public transportation. But again, that was sort of the original inspiration, was that brightness, was that sort of color that you see represented on the Filipino jeepneys.
Oh my goodness, I would have never thought of transportation for the design of the cans.
Yeah.
We're learning so much on Teatime. I love it when I learn some new stuff.
That's right.
Hey, Chris, we have a question here from you from Lynn. So, what advice would you give to others starting purpose-driven brands?
Yeah, I would say that the authenticity. Again, I think that there's a lot of purpose-driven brands out there trying to make their mark, but at the end of the day, I think it's about authenticity and about having a mission and a purpose that's deeply meaningful to yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to convince other people if it's not something you believe in 100%. And so I think whatever it is, again, like you said, Miss Liz, we all have our story and our journey. And so kind of taking that and figuring out from there what you want your mission to be and what you want your company to stand for is sort of step number one.
Now, we have a comment here that I want to get out to you, Chris, from Russ. It's respect for taking that leap after 20 years. Huge courage. We don't talk about the courage of pivoting our lifestyles and our changes and things like that enough in today's world. What was it like for you, Chris, after 20 years of taking that leap?
Yeah, it was scary, but I also knew there was something inside that I just knew that it was time. And again, it was sort of this thing of like, I'm not getting any younger, but again, corporate America will be there. But again, I keep wanting to say, but this moment is not going to be here forever. And so I knew that I needed, it felt right. All of the sort of the pieces in the universe came together, but it was scary. It was scary sort of turning in my laptop on my last day at the office. It was scary having to sign up for health insurance on my own. It is scary not having that direct deposit every couple of weeks coming in. And I was joking yesterday. I was in an event and I saw a few of my coworkers there, and we were talking about lawyers. And I said, "Yeah, I still have lawyers, but they're ones that I have to pay for now." Whereas if you work for a big company, right, like everyone is on speed dial. There's a team for everything. But my speed dial is just me and maybe my dog, who's not very much help when it comes to legal matters. But yeah, no, everything is riding on it. But so I think it's having conviction that you're starting something that is meaningful. And yeah, just knowing that the time's never going to be perfect, but what you just have to get to is, do you have something clear in your mind that you want to build?
So out of the 3 drinks that you have, there's only 3 flavors right now, right,
Only 3
Chris?
flavors, yep.
So which one is your favorite?
I mean, that's like asking like who your favorite child is, right?
Your favorite child? No, don't do it.
But it does rotate. It does rotate. But the current one is calamansi, just because it's the summertime. It's citrus. It's sort of, the perfect drink when you're just at the park, hanging out. And so yeah, I would say calamansi is my current favorite child.
Yeah, because when I did some homework, it's you said lime and mandarin orange. It's the Filipino lemonade, they consider it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I describe it. And so I wanted ways to be able to describe it that, sort of help break down those barriers. But yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. One of my memories from experiencing it on the sweet side was that, yeah, it was made into a drink and very akin to American lemonade, but based on the Filipino fruit. So that's sort of how I describe it, Filipino lemonade.
Well, kind of comes into the question that just came in from Adam. How did your childhood memories influence the flavors you created?
Yeah, like each one has a very distinct story. So melon, for example, is based on a dessert of the Philippines, melon sa malamig, which translated is basically an iced melon. And it's a very simple dessert, but I would remember my dad making it like during the summers. It's grated honeydew in a simple syrup, water and ice. So it's very sort of like refreshing. You get the sort of sweet melon, and then you get the strands of the melon in there. And so what that flavor is inspired by. Lychee is whenever my parents would take me with them to the Filipino grocery store, I would beeline it for the candy aisle where they had these little gummy lychees. And I would beg my parents to buy them for me. And so that's sort of very sort of like core to my memory of like going to the grocery store with my parents and then making it for the candy aisle to get that specific candy. And then, as I mentioned, calamansi, it was sort of everywhere, the Filipino lemonade, but it's also used in savory dishes. It's sort of Filipino foods are very rich. And so when you add calamansi, it sort of helps cut through that and makes, a really rich, savory dish, kind of brings it up a little bit with the freshness of the calamansi. So sort of all of these experiences and memories from childhood are what each of the flavors are based on.
I really like that, that there's a story behind each flavor, because that, when you're marketing that, and then you can share those childhood stories, right? When you're at events.
Yeah, exactly.
And see if somebody remembers those candies, like the lychee candies. I remember the first time I tried a lychee, I was like, what the heck is this? It's like a baby onion. I was so scared to try it. And then I was like, oh my goodness, it's so sweet.
I know, it's such a delicate flavor. I love it.
And it's not a fruit that we see in America or in Canada very much, right? So when people hear lychee, they're like, what the heck is that? Like, they think of lychees like, in the water, like the river. And we're not talking about the bugs, right? We're talking about the fruit. So can you share a little bit with my listeners about the lychee?
Yeah, it's so funny because lychee has become a little bit more popular in mainstream because of lychee martinis. That's whenever we're talking about it, usually one or two comments come up where they share that, oh, lychee, that's my favorite type of martini. Well, it is actually also mine. But yeah, no, the lychee fruit is kind of a fruit prevalent across Asia. And each of the cultures definitely has their way of experiencing it. but it's got a red rind, and then yeah, when you break into it, it's got that sort of white flesh that is just sort of a very delicate. That's the best way to like delicate flavor where it's like a cross between like a grape and a pear. So if you haven't had it, yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. But yeah, if you haven't tried it, definitely go check out. You can buy canned ones at usually Asian grocery food stores, or if like you don't have one of those near you, you can just get some on Amazon. The canned versions are great as well. Throw them in some ice and or throw them in a martini, and I think you guys will really like it.
We're promoting lychee martinis today as well.
Yeah, why not?
Go out and try it.
Yeah, why not?
A question here from Kelly is, what role does community play in building a legacy-focused brand like Campino? Am I saying it right now?
Campeon. We'll get it. We'll get there.
I'm close, guys. Like I'm just gonna get Chris to say.
Yeah, no, community is definitely everything. Like this morning we just hit 1,100 followers on Instagram, and so that was that was pretty exciting. And you know, the number itself is not so important to my team and I. I think it's the engagement that we see. And so to your question around community, it's all about the community. And because like I said, I am not the expert on Filipino culture. So building a brand like this and remaining authentic, a lot of it has to be informed by our customers and community. You know, whether it's people telling me about the ways they experienced it, each of the flavors or their memories. I get a lot of folks that say, for example, that they relate to the story being Filipino, but growing up in the United States and not really knowing that much about that heritage, their heritage. And so it's nice to be able to, I think, connect to the community on those deeply personal stories. But building the brand is all about, yeah, relying on the community to tell us where they would like to see it and the stories, how they want the stories to be told.
I think it's important that we keep heritage alive too, right? Because I'm big on education, right? I'm big on having these conversations, open heart conversations, where we talk about the cultures and the traditions and heritage, because I find that we're getting away from that in today's world, where we need to start bringing just stories back. We need to start bringing the cultures back. We need to start sharing, you know, and I'm sure you're learning on this journey as well. Like you said, learning and unlearning. How does your family stay involved with what you're doing, and how do they feel about what you're doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of I think my parents are very supportive. I'm not entirely sure they understand sort of what all is going on and what I'm trying to do, but they're very supportive. My sister actually just told me that my niece at her school had like cultural day, and she brought Campeons to sort of share with her school and her classmates, and I was like, that's so sweet. And so they've just been super supportive in terms of like understanding that they might not understand exactly all of the things that are happening, but they trust me enough to know that, you know, I'm making good decisions and doing my best to make the family proud.
You know, and it's always nice when the little kids get involved and they're like cheering you on right from the side, and they're like, oh, that's my uncle.
I know. We have a photo shoot for the brand later in the summer, and I'm hoping to convince my nieces and nephews to be part of the campaign. And the great thing is that they are not shy. They love being in front of a camera, and so I'm sure that it'll be an easy sell. But just on one thing that you mentioned, Liz, at the beginning around like culture and heritage and like losing it, I think in the discourse now around the world, we see culture and heritage as an either or, but I think it's an and. You know, I think that you don't have to, you don't, choosing one culture does not mean that you are denying or ignoring another. I think it's about right? And finding that we are more common than we are different from each other. And that sort of as you build on each other, like the sum is greater than its parts, sort of. And so that's what I hope folks also take away from the brand, that, the brand is about Filipino stories, but it's about welcoming everyone to be part of those stories, and sharing with people. This is not just a brand for Filipino people. We would love it if folks shared in the stories, and shared, because a lot of the brand is also influenced by, what you said around growing up in the United States. A lot of the brand is inevitably influenced, in great part, by my experiences growing up in California. But yeah, so it's not an either or, it's really an and when we talk about heritage and culture.
And I like this comment here from Bante Show. Love to focus on culture and connection. So important today. I'm a strong believer that storytelling and having these open conversations, open heart conversations, and having incredible guests and viewers that are tuning in and asking these incredible questions as well. It's a teamwork, it's community, it's all about coming together. We have a question here for you, Chris, from Matt Cole. What challenges did you face starting Campino?
Yeah.
Campino?
Kampeon.
Campeon.
Yeah.
Miss Liz, Campeon. I'm going to be able to say it by the end of the show.
Yeah, I think the big challenge was that I had never done it before. And I think that that's actually the challenge that I was looking for. Having worked in the same job for 18 years, a lot of it, I felt like I was doing on autopilot, in terms of I was presented with a challenge, and I sort of knew what to do. And a great part of what I wanted was to be uncomfortable, if that makes sense. And so I think the greatest challenge was just not knowing what I was getting myself into. But that was probably, also a good thing, in the sense that if you kind of overthink it when you're doing things like this, it's easier for you to talk yourself out of it, than to talk yourself into it. And so what I will say is that it has been so fun figuring things out. And then also I have just been so pleased and amazed and quite frankly surprised at how giving other founders are about sharing their experiences and giving advice. And so I have been ingesting podcasts and sort of reading articles. And I went on a cold calling LinkedIn spree where I would say, hey, I heard you on so-and-so podcast, or I read your article. I was wondering if I could pick your brain for 5 minutes. And I would say, I think 100% of the time, they said, yes, feel free to give me a call. And so that has been great. And so I think, again, if you're honest about what you're building and what you're trying to do, you will be amazed at how many people show up, whether or not you know them, to offer help and advice. And so, yeah, that was the most, I think, difficult thing, is just figuring out how to do the process of, how do you get a blank can to have a label, to have, to be packaged, to be in a warehouse, to be in a store. That was I think the most difficult part. But again, a lot of people showed up to provide help and advice, when they really didn't have to.
Right. And I find in the entrepreneur world, everyone's ready to give you advice, right? Everyone is open to sitting and giving that 5 minutes if you want to take it seriously. If you're asking for help and you want to know a little bit different direction or stuff like that, there's a lot of openness in the entrepreneur world, I find.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, a question just came in for you is, how do flavors become a storytelling tool for identity and connection?
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of the strongest connection that I had to Filipino culture was flavors. And so I think that anchoring and using those memories as the foundation of the story, one, sort of hits on that authenticity thing that I was talking about, because they're my memories. And so they were the most authentic way I could express the brand, was drawing on those experiences. And so I tell the story about lychee and me running for the candy. I think I've told that story so many times, and every time I get excited to tell it. And I think that excitement and that authenticity, again, translates and helps me connect with the customers and community, because we've all had I think flavor and taste. I think I read somewhere where those are the two senses that are sort of the strongest in the senses that we have as human beings, in terms of evoking memories. And so yeah, building the foundation on those things, I think, allowed me to sort of use that as a springboard to tell the bigger mission of the brand.
I like it, because you're sharing the authenticity of your journey as well, right?
Yep.
And for the listeners out there, they're just like, oh, so it does take steps. It doesn't just go 1, 2, 3, boom, it's done. It does take steps. So how long did it take for the beginning to the finished product for you, Chris, to come to life?
So I came up with the idea for Kampeon in November of 2024. So it was Thanksgiving. I remember very clearly. And then we launched the product officially December 1st, 2025. So it was about a year. And in that year, it was sort of like, figuring out all the parts and pieces, from making the recipes, finding a manufacturer, developing the brand, going through all the legal and compliance work. And so it took about a year from the day one of the idea to having a product in my hand that I could then sell to a customer.
Chris, I want to get into the advocacy work that you do as well, because you do a lot of advocacy work for your heritage and culture. Share a little bit about that with my listeners today.
Yeah, I had the opportunity when I worked at the bank to be part of small business advocacy groups. I was on the board of the Golden Gate Business Association, which is the first and oldest LGBTQ small business chamber of commerce. And so, it's things like that again, to the earlier question about what I missed, it's things like that made it hard to leave my old job. But I'm finding sort of new ways to be involved in the community now. And so I think the biggest advocacy right now is working with creatives and artists that are Filipino or AAPI to help inform the brand. And so one of the things is that I did work with a Filipino designer out of Alaska to help me with our icon library. And, it was really great. The first time we met, she knew exactly what I was trying to accomplish with our icon library. And so, I think it's those opportunities where you have shared wins by using your platform to sort of elevate other brands and other creators. And so I think, that is, we hope to continue to do that. And if you have any opportunities, certainly we're open to them.
Chris, what does turning experience into action look like in your daily leadership today?
Oh, good question. I think it's just about, again, drawing from personal and professional. And so what I really appreciate about my career prior to this one is that it taught me the discipline of running a company when you're at a big corporation. But what I love right now is that I get to take that discipline, but also get to apply a little bit of carte blanche in terms of when you have to work something through a big company, it often takes a long time. But when you're at a smaller company like ours, you can do things faster, you can take bigger risks, you can take bigger swings, and the bureaucracy is not as pronounced. So I think those two things have actually been a really great thing for the company, because I bring that discipline from working at a big company, but then now I get to also pair that with sort of the go fast and break things mentality when you're in a startup. And so being able to sort of keep those two in check and keep those two things in balance allow us to sort of go quickly, but then have a risk mindset in mind as well.
Well, and I want to get into why you gave me turning experience into action for your tea. Why'd you give me that?
Yeah, so turning experience into action, because I think we're all part, we're, you know, as human beings, we are the sum of our experiences. And so at the end of the day, like you can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do and how you respond to it. And so I think, you know, we all have experiences that are good and bad, and turning into action is really the only thing that we can control in this world. And so that's why I wanted to give that as my tease, because I think for me, it's about, you know, it's about figuring out how to make the best and how to, you know, make the planet a better place for future generations. You know, that's the only thing that we can control. And hopefully that me creating this brand brings joy and brings something better to a world that when I'm long gone, you know, that there was a piece of this that survives that, you know, gave impact or a voice to someone beyond me. Yeah, and so I think that that's why I gave that as my T.
Are you hoping that this will be your legacy?
I gotten that question a couple of times already, and I think it's, for me at least, I think it's too premature to talk about legacy. What, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think I would want my legacy to be a business. I think I would want my legacy to be someone that, you know, made life better for other people. And whether that is the business, whether that is just me, myself, and I as Chris Galang, I think that that's what I want my legacy to be. But if the business does take off, if it's living 100 years from now and is it is the Pepsi of its time for Filipino sparkling water drinks, then great. But I think I'd much rather focus on creating a legacy where people are like, yeah, Chris was a great guy. He was pretty funny too. And, you know, he made a mean lychee martini. You know, those are the things. Yeah. But I think it's too premature to talk about legacy and Kampeon. I hope that the legacy that I leave is bigger than just being a good business person.
Absolutely. You know, and people throw words around so easily without understanding them, right?
Yeah.
I get this a lot of time from people as well. What legacy do you want to leave, Miss Liz? I just wanted people to remember me as a good person. I
Right.
don't
Exactly.
want to be remembered as the tea time lady. I want to be remembered as the lady that went the extra mile, or, you know, got up during her struggles and just kept getting back up. That's the legacy
Absolutely.
I want to be remembered for, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Agreed.
kind of what you're saying here too, Chris, is,
Absolutely.
you know, if the drink kicks off and it gets, you know, viral and all of that, but at the end of the day, you want people to remember you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So Chris, we have a question here from a strategy show. How do you plan to expand while still preserving the cultural roots behind? I'm going to get you to say it.
Yeah. Behind
Water.
Kampeon Water. Yeah, I think it's about hiring one. So right now I'm a company of one. I do have some great fractional help, some contractors, but as a company, I'm a company of one. And I think that a big part of it is being able to hire people that believe in the mission. I think that's how you preserve the sort of soul of your business, right? Is making sure that you are working with people that know what you want to do and sort of understand the vision, respect the vision. And so I think that that's probably core, is building a company culture where the idea of culture is not an add-on, but it is sort of the foundation of the business. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably at this stage of where the company is at. I would answer that question. I'm sure it'll evolve through the years, but I think it's about working with people, whether that is distributor, whether that's employees, whether that's retailers, who really understand the value proposition of the brand is not water, is not the vitamins, but it's really the culture behind it. And I think that's the best way to preserve what we started and what we hope the company will become.
Absolutely. We have a question here for you from Matthew. Looking back, what moment made you realize that this journey was bigger than just a business idea?
I think it was that when I started telling my story about like why I wanted to do this, that became the conversation. That became the conversation. And it wasn't like people were asking me questions of like, yeah, tell me more about this growing up. Tell me more about lychee. Tell me more about your dad's melon drink. And, you know, that's when I think I knew that it was going to be, that it had the opportunity and potential to be more, was that when I shared those stories, what started out as questions about the business ended up being questions about like these shared experiences that people that I didn't know were telling me that they could relate to. And so I think that that's sort of when it, like, yes, I was in an event yesterday, as I mentioned, Miss Liz. And a lot of the stories were, yeah, not about the business. They were about, yeah, tell me about the story about this flavor. And I think that that's a good sign that when you build a business that people connect to beyond the product, it's a good indication that you're building something that's going to be bigger than the product.
I like that. The connection of the individual before the product.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost like building the relationship before building a profit, right?
Yes, for sure. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Like anything that's sustainable, yeah, it can't be transactional.
Yeah. Chris, do you have any intentions of bringing other flavors to the table, or are you just sticking with the three?
The three are doing great right now, and we're getting really good feedback on it. There are a couple of, or more than a couple of flavors on the wish list, whether that's family saying, hey, you should have this, X, Y, and Z. But again, to the earlier question around how I make business decisions, I want to do flavors where, again, there's a deeply personal story behind it, whether me or something that someone on the team eventually or my family has. So I want to be able to tell the story. And so while our list of flavors is really long, we're kind of going through it and figuring out where are the ones where it would be the most meaningful to add, where we have a really good story to tell. And, I have a really great memory of it to share with consumers.
Well, Chris, you mentioned your father. I found something here about your father. Where is it? I'm a digger, guys. The melon was inspired by your dad's recipe. So let's talk about your dad's recipe.
Yeah, and it was a very simple dessert. Like I mentioned there, it's inspired by melon sa malamig, which translated again is just ice melon. And so, yeah, my dad would make it over the summers. My dad was really good at like desserts, very simple, like 1-2 recipe desserts. And so, but this one, the melon one was something that I just always remembered because I always thought it was so cool to be able to grate the melon into those strings. And then, yeah, I'm thinking about it right now, and I can feel the recipe. And
you can taste it in your mouth.
Yeah. And so that's the story behind that. Behind that flavor is I just remember him making it, and I remember thinking, wow, this tastes really good. It was very sort of like iconic of summers. And then, yeah, just remembering how cool I thought it was to be able to grate it into those strands of melon that were just really delicious.
For all of the listeners that are coming in from Filipino, share in the comments what your favorite recipe or dessert was, and maybe we can get them to Chris.
Yeah,
maybe Chris can come up with an ideal.
one flavor we always get requested for is ube. And I know ube's having sort of its moment in mainstream right now, and more people are like figuring out what it is. I would say that's a tough flavor. We made some trials of ube. Not to say that it's impossible, but if we're gonna do it, I want to do it right. And so more to come, but it's definitely on the list, and I certainly have a lot of memories and stories to share about that flavor. So I'd love to bring it to the lineup once we can figure out how to translate it and keep it authentic.
So what is an ube?
Ube is actually a root vegetable, taro. Yeah, and it's purple. But yeah, it's a dessert that's very popular in the Philippines. Again, it's having its moment in mainstream right now. From boba to brownies to cupcakes. Sort of ube is because I think Starbucks introduced an ube flavor for the summer, seasonal flavor. And so ube's having its moment, but it is a sort of a purple root. So you sort of harvest it, you grind it down, and then you turn it into like a puree, and add like different sweeteners to it to make desserts. But it's typically served sweet, but it's a root.
Is that purple fruit that they made a pie out of? I
Yeah.
bought a pie.
Yeah. Purple yam, taro, I think.
Okay, so yeah, they said that it would taste like yam, like a purple yam.
Yeah, it's it's fun, and definitely again, it's a lot of memories of that. And I love that it's having its moment in mainstream.
I'm learning so much about your culture and heritage and the different fruits and vegetables, but I bought that pie and I was surprised that it was very sweet.
Yeah, it's
I was getting ready for like an eggplant kind of meaty kind of taste, and I was just like, oh, this is really sweet.
Yeah, it comes in like different, people have been creating different recipes from it, which is amazing. But yeah, my memory of it is as a pie, like an ube cake pie. I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, my job as a kid when my mom would make the desserts was to stir the pot. I'd be sitting on top of the stove and like stirring this purple thing on the stove until it thickened enough for it to be made into a dessert.
And this is what I love about Tea Time is we get to learn so much from everyone that comes to the table, and because we're learning so much about the culture and the foods, the taste, the flavors.
Good.
When you were mentioning that you could taste the recipe of your dad's dessert, that's like when someone tells me there's a lemon, my mouth, I see like right now my mouth is like sour. I'm just like, oh, like I can taste the lemon.
Yeah.
It was that kind of the feeling you were getting when you're thinking of your dad's dessert.
I don't have to look. And I don't even have to look very far because I've got some Kampeon melon in the fridge, and I think it honors that my dad's recipe pretty closely. So I don't have
Chris,
to go far.
What advice would you give to others wanting to build something rooted in their heritage?
Yeah, again, it's going back to the authenticity, like building a cultural brand for the sake of it is I don't think ever going to be really successful. And so whatever type of brand that you have, I think it's about making sure that it's easy for you to talk about, and for usually things that mean something to you personally is very easy to talk about. Yesterday, again, I had the opportunity to be in an event talking to people about Kampeon, and at the end of the night, my voice started to crack because I had been talking so much throughout the entire night. But it's also sort of like I couldn't stop talking about it, and I had so much to say about the brand because it is so deeply personal. That everything is just a conversation when I talk about Kampeon. And so I think, that would be my advice is like, dive into it. Don't overguess yourself, but also before you dive into it, like also think about what means the most to you. And it might not be the most profitable thing, but I think profit will come if you build a community that is highly engaged, that is highly engaged and that resonate with the stories that you're trying to tell.
And Chris, I'm going to pull up the picture again. If you just want to tell people where they can get it, where supermarkets, grocery stores, convenience stores, where can people get this drink?
Yeah, so we're available online on our website, kampeonwater.com, as well as Amazon. We're only available in the United States right now. As far as like retailers, if you're in Northern California, we're going to be in more stores. We just signed our first distribution deal, so we're going to be announcing stores throughout the summer. But we're available in Byright in San Francisco at their locations. And then follow us on Instagram to get announcements of where we'll be at across Northern California. That's sort of our plan right now, is to build traction in retail in California. And so, again, this distribution deal should help us get there for the northern half. And we'll be tackling the southern half of California on the latter part of this year.
And Chris, what message would you give to anyone that's listening today about your journey and your story?
Wow, that's big. I think that I would just say thank you for the support. Thank you for listening to this podcast, because even that means the world to me. And so I would say thank you to the community that we built. And if you have something that you're wanting to build, again, there's no time like the present.
And Chris, we're going to do some lightning bolt questions before we wrap it up. We got a couple minutes left here. So just quick answers for these questions. One word that defines your journey.
One word that defines my journey. Oh, goodness. Exciting.
Why the word exciting?
I think it's just been exciting learning new things, exciting meeting customers, exciting sharing stories. And so really this, that word might have been different a month ago, but just the last 30 days, there's just been so much excitement about the brand. We learned from retailers that our sales have been really good, like above average for our category. So that's exciting. Again, the opportunity to talk about the brand as we've gained traction is just exciting. And so a lot of things have just been exciting over the last 30 days. And so that's probably top of mind for me right now.
And culture or business, what leads you?
Fairness. Yeah, I think fairness. I joke that I'm a Libra, and so sort of like represented by the scales, that's sort of always been, I think, part of my brand, my personal brand, is that I think fairness, whether you are a leader in corporate America, a leader in your own life, a leader of your own company, I think in the end of the day, fairness is what builds relationships, and it's what builds trust.
And Chris, a flavor outside of the flavors that you have for your drinks.
Yeah.
What feels like home for you?
Mango. I know I get a lot. Mango is, I believe, considered the national fruit of the Philippines. Also something that I learned recently. And I wanted to do a mango, but when you think about a Filipino mango, it's very iconic. And so I wanted to make sure that the the mango that we created was going to be different than the mangoes on the market. And so I think that, I get a lot of questions about why I didn't do mango in this first run, because certainly a mango is one of my favorite fruits. I want it to be part of the lineup at some point, but I also want to get it right.
And what does being a champion mean to you?
I think being a champion means figuring out whose voice needs to be amplified and supported. And so I think it goes back to the fairness question, or the fairness word, is that, part of being a leader is advocating for people to have equal time at the table. And so I think being a champion is about making sure that all the voices are heard.
I like that. All voices.
Yeah.
So what final message would you have for the listeners today?
I would just say thank you, and I hope that, if nothing else, is in this inspired a few budding entrepreneurs to take the leap, because that's always fun. And also that I hope that you guys learned something from my story, and would love for you all to follow our journey. We're on Instagram at Kampeon Water, and please check us out and give us a follow.
Could you just spell out your website for the listeners out there?
Absolutely. KampeonWater.com. KampeonWater.com.
And you guys can all get your drinks in the US. So, if you're in a different country, just travel to the US and go grab yourself a drink.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Right? Well, Chris, everyone, I really thank you for joining me on Tea Time today. I want to thank all the viewers and listeners that jumped in and gave your questions. I could not do this without you guys. So we're just going to do a quick wrap up of what today's Tea Time was. And then I'll be back at 7 p.m. with another Tea Time, and we'll do this all over again. What a refreshing and meaningful conversation. Chris, thank you for sharing your journey. One that reminds us that sometimes the things we once overlooked become the very things that defined us. This afternoon, we were reminded that culture is not something we leave behind. It is something we carry, rediscover, and choose to celebrate. Your work shows that when we embrace where we come from, we create something authentic, something lasting, and something that connects people in a real way. From a quiet longing to reconnect, to building a brand rooted in purpose, your story is proof that identity can evolve into impact. Here is something to carry with you after this tea time. What part of your story or culture have you been overlooking that could become the greatest strength? Because sometimes the things that make you different is the very thing that makes you powerful. Until our next cup, keep sharing, keep honoring your roots, and keep creating with purpose, and keep sharing your story with the world. And I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. and we'll do this all over again. Thank you all for joining me today on Tea Time.
Thanks, Ms. Liz.